the mad fictional imagination playhouse presents Death Do Us Not Part by Rhyan Scorpio-Rhys. Dr. Walter Baldwin was a man of science, a brilliant neuroscientist. He had dedicated his life to understanding the complexities of human brainwaves. His research was groundbreaking, but it was also unconventional. He believed that the brain held secrets beyond the living, secrets that could bridge the gap between life and death. But everything changed the day his wife Dorothy was killed in a freak auto accident. The news shattered him. Walter had always been a rational man, but grief twisted his mind into a dark labyrinth. He could not accept her death. He refused to let go. Days turned into weeks, and Walter's obsession grew. He began to redirect his research. Instead of studying brainwaves for medical advancements, he sought to make contact with the dead. He believed that if he could harness the power of brainwaves, he could reach Dorothy. His daughter Shirley watched in horror as her father spiraled deeper into madness. "Dad, please, you need to stop this," she pleaded. But Walter was deaf to her warnings. He was consumed by his desire to speak to his wife again. Richard Fisk, his research assistant, tried to intervene. "Walter, this is dangerous. You're crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed." But Walter dismissed him. "You don't understand, Richard. I have to do this. I have to bring her back." Walter moved his laboratory to an isolated mansion on the outskirts of Atlanta. The house was old and creaked with memories. It was the perfect place for his experiments. He surrounded himself with equipment that hummed and buzzed, a cacophony of sounds that filled the empty spaces left by Dorothy's absence. Lester Allen, a neurodivergent employee, joined Walter in his quest. He was brilliant in his own right, able to see patterns where others saw chaos. Together, they worked tirelessly, night after night, trying to decode the signals of the dead. But it wasn't just science that guided Walter. He sought the help of Madame Gravestone, a self-proclaimed medium with a reputation for being a fraud. She was a woman of peculiar charm, with a voice that dripped with honeyed promises. "I can help you reach her," she whispered, her eyes glinting with something sinister. Walter was entranced. He believed her. He needed to believe her. Madame Gravestone became a fixture in the mansion, her presence both comforting and unsettling. She would hold seances, her voice rising and falling like a tide as she claimed to channel the spirits. Shirley grew increasingly worried. She could see the toll it was taking on her father. "You're losing yourself, Dad. This isn't right." But Walter was too far gone. He was a man possessed, driven by a singular purpose. One evening, as a storm raged outside, Walter and Lester prepared for a particularly intense session. The air crackled with electricity. They set up the equipment, wires snaking across the floor like veins. Madame Gravestone stood at the center, her arms raised, eyes closed. "Spirits of the beyond, hear my call," she intoned. Walter's heart raced. He could feel the energy in the room shifting. He was on the brink of something monumental. But then the housekeeper, Mrs. Hargrove, entered the room. She had been cleaning, her curiosity piqued by the strange happenings. "What are you doing in here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Walter turned, anger flaring. "Get out, you don't understand." But Mrs. Hargrove was undeterred. She stepped closer, her eyes wide with fear and fascination. "I just want to help." In that moment, the atmosphere shifted. The lights flickered, and a low hum filled the air. Walter felt a surge of energy, a connection forming. "Dorothy?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. But before he could grasp the moment, Madame Gravestone's demeanor changed. Her eyes snapped open, wild and unfocused. "No, you mustn't!" she screamed. The room erupted in chaos. The equipment sparked and crackled. Walter felt a force pulling at him, a dark energy that threatened to consume him. Mrs. Hargrove screamed, her body convulsing as she fell to the ground. Walter rushed to her side, but it was too late. She lay still, her eyes wide open, staring into the void. Panic set in. The sheriff was called. The small town of Atlanta was rocked by the news. A woman had died under mysterious circumstances in the old Baldwin mansion. Sheriff Thompson arrived, his face grim. He surveyed the scene, taking in the chaos, the strange equipment and the frantic expressions of Walter and Lester. "What happened here?" he demanded. Walter stammered. "We were trying to reach the dead. I just wanted to talk to Dorothy." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "You're playing with forces you don't understand, Baldwin. This isn't just science, it's madness." But Walter was beyond reason. He was consumed by his grief, his obsession blinding him to the reality of his actions. As the investigation unfolded, Shirley fought to save her father. She knew he was lost, but she couldn't let him go down this path. "Dad, please, you have to stop this." But Walter was unyielding. He was determined to continue, even as the shadows of his actions loomed larger. Madame Gravestone, sensing the shift in power, began to manipulate Walter further. "You must complete the ritual," she urged, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Only then will you find peace." Walter was entranced. He believed her words, even as they led him deeper into darkness. The mansion became a prison of his own making. The walls whispered secrets, the shadows danced with malevolence. Walter was trapped in a cycle of grief and obsession, unable to escape the grip of his own mind. As the days turned into weeks, the town grew wary of the Baldwin mansion. Whispers of curses and dark magic spread like wildfire. The sheriff kept a close watch, but Walter was too far gone to care. One fateful night, as a full moon hung low in the sky, Walter prepared for the final séance. He was desperate. He needed to see Dorothy again. He needed closure. Lester stood by, his face pale. "Walter, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this." But Walter was resolute. "I have to do this, Lester. I have to know." Madame Gravestone led the ritual, her voice rising in a crescendo. The air thickened, charged with energy. Walter felt the familiar pull, the connection forming. "Dorothy!" he cried, his heart racing. But instead of his wife's voice, he heard a cacophony of screams. The room shook, the lights flickered violently. Shadows twisted and writhed, taking on forms that were both familiar and terrifying. Walter's heart sank. This was not what he wanted. This was not his wife. In that moment of realization, the energy surged, and the room exploded in a blinding flash. Walter was thrown back, landing hard on the floor. When the light faded, he looked around in horror. The room was empty, the equipment shattered. Madame Gravestone lay unconscious, and Lester was nowhere to be found. Walter crawled to the door, panic rising in his chest. He stumbled outside, gasping for air. The mansion loomed behind him, a dark silhouette against the night sky. He had lost everything: his wife, his sanity, his life's work. As the sheriff arrived, Walter fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I just wanted to bring her back," he sobbed. But it was too late. The darkness had claimed him. The mansion stood silent, a monument to his obsession. In the end, Walter Baldwin became a cautionary tale. A man who reached too far, who sought to defy the natural order. The whispers of the Baldwin mansion lingered in the town, a reminder of the dangers that lay in the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. And as the moon hung high in the sky, the shadows danced, forever holding the secrets of the dead. You have been watching the mad fictional imagination playhouse presentation of Death Do Us Not Part by Rhyan Scorpio-Rhys. If you enjoyed yourself, consider hitting like and subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications for when our next videos drop. Also, be kind enough to leave us a comment below, because we need to let the algorithm know this channel exists. Thanks for watching. Ciao, till next now.